Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. I'm in the middle of a 30 for 30. That's 30 videos in 30 days. And my goal is to focus on mental health or mental health issues so that we have a better understanding. So I'm pumping out this content. In today's video, we're going to talk about dissociative disorders. And there are really three dissociative disorders that are in the DSM-5 that stand out. There's dissociative amnesia, dissociative identity disorder, and a depersonalization disorder. And I'm going to make three separate videos because it's too much content to fill in one video. But it's important to note before we get into this video that we can have dissociative properties outside of a dissociative identity disorder. So if a person has obsessive compulsive disorder, they can become engrossed in whatever they're doing and not recall what happened. If a person had trauma, one of the protective features is to dissociate so you don't have to experience that trauma to the same level. And of course, substances of abuse can also induce dissociative states. For example, with alcohol, if a person drinks too much, it's not uncommon for a person to black out and not remember what happened or have gaps in memory. So those are what dissociative disorders are not. They're differential diagnosis, but here we go. So I'm going to talk about dissociative disorders in general before getting into dissociative amnesia. And then I'm going to go into an assessment for dissociative experiences. So stick around. I like to always provide an instrument as a clinical psychologist, how to use this in your practice, or if you're curious about yourselves, a screening instrument that could be helpful. So the key to our identity is our sense of who we are and how we fit in our environment. What's the key? Our memory. Because it's our recall of our past experiences that help us react to the present. And it guides our decision-making process for the future. So the consistency that a person generally has is based on their memory and their ability to learn from their mistakes. A person with dissociative disorder, it's going to be a little bit more fragmented. So some people struggle with a disruption of memory in two different ways. They're generally speaking, this is what we call amnesia, but there's anterograde amnesia. Anterograde amnesia is the inability to remember new things, whereas retrograde amnesia is the inability to remember old information. So what is the physical cause of a dissociative disorder? It's not clear. It's still in the professional space uncertain what the physical cause is. So, but we do understand that part of a person's memory seems to be dissociated or separated off from the rest of the memory. So let's talk about dissociative amnesia, which is the inability to recall important information, usually of upsetting nature about their lives. So we talked about PTSD and dissociations, but this is a more extreme version. This loss of memory is more extensive than just regular forgetting, and it cannot be explained by some other physical factor such as dementia or neurocognitive disorders, right? So It's more than simple forgetting. It's more severe, and it interferes with aspects of a person's life, right? So not being able to remember it. So, and if you look at what the trigger, I say in my class when I'm teaching about psychological disorders, stress is a universal trigger to mental illness. So if we look at upsetting events or stress, oftentimes an episode of amnesia could be explained by that. So dissociative amnesia, it could be localized, which is the most common type, where a person loses all memory of events within a limited time period. It could be selective, where a person loses some of their memory, but not all of the events occurring within a period. It could be generalized, which is more of a loss of memory beginning with an event, but it can also extend back in time. And this really is concerning because the person may lose their sense of identity or even fail to recognize their friends and families. And then, of course, unfortunately, there's something called continuous dissociative amnesia, where a person struggles going forward. So they have this forgetfulness that continues into the future. It's rare, but I want you to know it because it is a subtype. So, what is a fugue? So, a fugue is when a person goes into a foggy mental state, and not only do they forget who they are, but they forget details of their past. They might leave from one city to the next and not even remember how they got there. But fugue states tend to be brief. They could be a matter of hours or days, but they end suddenly or abruptly, which is quite alarming. And people may not understand what's going on because, hey, how did I get here? And for others, the fugue is a little more severe. If it's extensive, people may travel far from their home. They may even adopt a new identity, a new name. They might establish new relationships or even a new line of work and, demonstrate new personality characteristics. So that is a more extreme case, but most of the time the fugue states are short term. So when we think of dissociative conditions, that's what it looks like. But before we end, I want to show you something called dissociative experiences scale, because it's a 28 item instrument, but it really paints a picture of all the different ways that a person may become disconnected with their reality. So let me pull that up and show it to you. So here we are. This is the dissociative experiences scale. And as I mentioned, it's a 28 item questionnaire, which allows us to tap into a person's daily life. And we preface anyone filling it out that, hey, make sure that if you're filling this out, that these experiences are not when you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And we give them an understanding of a spectrum of what percentage of the time you experience this dissociation, which goes from 0% all the way to 100%. And let's take a look at some of the items. So one example of a dissociative experience could be where a person is driving a car and then suddenly they don't remember part of the trip. How did I get here? They could also, have a conversation and not remember part of what was said or not even hear part of what was said. They could find themselves in a new place, which we talked about in fugue-like states. This is more common, and have no idea how they got there. They might find themselves dressed or clothed and not remember putting their clothing on. They might find new things amongst their belongings and not remember buying it. They might feel that they never met someone. So someone approaches and says hi, and they may not remember the person or their name. They might feel as though they're watching themselves as almost like an outer body experience. Now, we'll talk about depersonalization and derealization. This is more in that line, and so forth. But there are 28 items, and you get the idea. Some are pure memory issues, so amnesia related. Some items are related to depersonalization or derealization. And then there are engrossment factors where, for example, if you're driving and you don't remember how you got somewhere, you might have been engrossed in your thoughts or something else. So these are items. It's 28 items, and then you wind up scoring it and figuring out what the mean score is. Obviously, the larger the percentage, the more of a dissociative experience a person is having. This is an incredible instrument. Now, it is a screening instrument versus a diagnostic instrument. And we refer to it as a screening instrument because you're going to want to probe further. This just gives you a sense of what kind of dissociative experience a person is having. Is it related to amnesia or fugue? Is it related to general sense of identity or who they are, which we refer to as multiple personalities? Or is it depersonalization or derealization? From this instrument, you would want to probe further. So that's the video. So you learned all about what dissociative amnesia is, dissociative fugue is, and you saw an instrument how to measure dissociative experiences. So if you like what I had to offer and found it useful, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, hit the notifications tab so you're aware of what we're doing. My goal, my mission is to bring psychology to the general public, and you help me along the way in doing so. Because the more of a group we have, the more YouTube recognizes the channel and pushes this content out to a larger audience. So help me help you, and hit the like button, subscribe, click the notifications tab, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.